you want to talk about your project. I just saw it. I really just literally saw it a few minutes ago. It's beautiful, definitely, but there's much more than beauty to it. Which one of you guys want to jump in and tell us what Dream Engine is all about?
Basically, Dream Engine, in a sentence, is you're watching the blockchain, you're listening to the blockchain while watching it dream. That's the simplest explanation about it. So we sort of took this approach of, what would the blockchain look like if it was dreaming and speaking to us. So we came up with this sort of idea of this interactive art piece that you could create your own works with, but also it's always attached to a signature hash. So in other words, when you mint one, you get the signature hash written across the top. You see those numbers across the top. That's the signature hash. Right. So that's where it belongs on. That's where it belongs on the blockchain. Then we decided to break up each one of those letters into notes, musical notes.
Yep.
And then provide a sort of ongoing loop that would then give the signature hash a signature sound. So now you've got a signature hash with a signature sound. No other signature will sound exactly like that. Yeah, be completely different. Only this mint will sound like this thing. Then the interactivity. Oh, and then we've got the nodes, the circle nodes that float around or spin around the composition, the dream composition as we call them. Each one of them has their own. Has the same letters as above, so each one of them has the notes in them as well as the letters, so you'll see the numbers within the little nodes. They're actually referencing the top, and then as they get closer together, DC used something called graph theory, which sort of brings them closer together, and then they sort of link each other with a chain.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk a little bit about some of the origination of it. The Art Blocks has a format where you get access to the hash of the minting. So there's a unique kind of DNA seed for every single work of art. So then I was looking at ways of, making that more distinctive to people. If you think about, to a computer, every one of those hashes looks really, really different. But to a human, those numbers, like these numbers at the top here, all look quite similar. But if you think of this, it's kind of like a retina scan. It's like an individual image of an eye. And what we're trying to do is make it almost like, like a fingerprint or a thumbprint or something that's visually unique. And then the other layer that's happening there is basically looking at the different hash codes, and then we're forming connections to different hash codes as they get close to each other. So what we're trying to do...
And play along with it as well. You can actually play with it as a musical instrument that way as well.
Yeah, okay. And it listens to what you're saying. But, fundamentally it's taking the block hash but then rendering it as a graph using, simple adjacency matrices and things like that to form these connections. I mean, these are some of the kind of early sketches when I was trying to work through different kind of visuals on the ideas. And you can see how it's basically come out, like connecting similar numbers and, isolating numbers that are similar to each other. But then we layer on this constant animation. So there are different kind of rings that are moving in different directions. So the idea is it's never really at rest. An interesting thing that happened from one of our, we did another piece before called Talking Blocks, and we heard that a number of people are putting them actually into galleries, so they're in live kind of installations on huge screens. So what I think we've come up with here is something called like ambient interactivity. Like when most people think of NFTs, they think of static JPEGs. And then at the other end of the spectrum, there's things like games, which are really, really interactive. But what we're aiming for here is something that kind of sits in the middle. So it's interacting with you, just like you can see it's listening to what I'm saying here right now. And the image is changing as we're talking, but not in a like super distracting kind of blinky blink way. It's just kind of a background soft interactivity. And, I'd encourage people to go to the Art Block site because, you can maybe hear it while I'm talking. But it's playing like the sound of wind chimes. So it's a very relaxing kind of melodic, soothing background ambient interactivity that we're creating here.
Each letter is getting played. So every time he speaks or you speak to it, the letter is then extracted and that has a note assigned to it. So every single letter gets played. So if you wanted to hear what your name sounded like, you could just repeat your name or type your name into it, and then you'll get a composition that looks like that is representative of your name. Your name would appear at the top and you will hear what it sounds like as well. The sound is also psychoacoustic as well, and what that means is it's created in a hertz that is designed to, like DC said, relax you. It's a meditative sort of sound, and it actually affects your alpha brainwaves into a rested state. So you can sleep on it, meditate on it, create on it.
What frequency is it?
It's between 40 hertz and 880 hertz, and within those frequencies, it hits the points of the psychoacoustic hertzes that reside within them.
Yep.
And most of those within those between 80 and 880, they're all relaxing ones. As you get higher, then they start becoming more sort of aggressive. In other words, not aggressive for people, but like it makes you more stimulated. Whereas this, we wanted people to relax. So.
And all of the audio is generated from code as well. So it's not just, when we talk about generative art, I'd like to make the distinction from like PFPs where people are just combining different layers together and calling that generative. Yes. To me, that's just combinative art. So this is truly generative. So there's, an algorithm, there's code that is creating the images. And in this case, it's also creating the sound that goes with it in real time. So every one of these images in this series, they will always start off the same. So it's called, basically it's kind of predictable. So if you purchase one of these mints and you go to the live page for it, you'll see this one has that particular combination of pink or background colors. Then we've got occasional, this is a rare one, this is what's called like the X-ray, this is the skeleton
one.
And then there's an X-ray where some of the colors kind of interact in a kind of negative way to each other, invert each other, and that's what we're calling like the X-ray version, like maybe this one.
That one, yeah.
So they start off basically in a predictable, format, but then after that, you can then play with it. So, I can type in like human and machine. It's a little bit hard to probably see in the colors up there, but basically that will always be the same signature pattern. So in a way, you could take this with you in future. Maybe we'll be showing these to, if you have to go across a border and you need to memorize a very long hash, you could memorize the image because it's easier for people to visualize an image. It's a little bit, like how they broke phone numbers into like 3, 3, and 4 digits because people couldn't memorize like all 10 digits together. So we're trying to take that and make like a visual representation of your very unique individual hash.
And as DC said before, it interacts with, he mentioned talking blocks, but with talking blocks we built, this is kind of the sister project to Talking Blocks, which is the first project. Talking Blocks actually listens to you. So there's no sound associated with Talking Blocks, but it has a similar sort of theory. It's you see the blockchain hash that it belongs to, that gets burnt into it, but it also has these concentric rings that cascade when you talk or play music. or if it's in a live environment or in the street or in a gallery, it will pick up all the sound and it will react to it. So the reason why Dream Engine is so important to be face to face with that and becomes ambient interactive art is that Dream Engine plays music, therefore Talking Back listens to the Talking Blocks listens to the music, and you get a sort of a feedback loop going on between the two. One will inform the other, then re-inform the other. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear it in the background, but as I'm talking now, you'll see Talking Blocks on the left here will kind of beat, the vibes kind of increase. But those sounds are actually coming out of Dream Engine on the right. So they were designed to be kind of sister projects. They have like a lot of similarities. But at the same time, they're almost completely different from almost anything else that you see in terms of generative art. And I think that's very much, coming from the background of like interactive design, like, when we're looking at the evolution of NFTs, so you have these JPEGs as being the kind of first generation of stuff. Then, on some sites like Art Blocks, there is a generation of kind of visual, code-driven stuff where the image is just being generated. But I think what I'm trying to do here is use that kind of sensibility of game design and interactive experiences so that people can really get involved with the artwork. I mean, it's whimsical. It's more like an art toy in some ways than a game. It's more like kinetic sculpture, those kind of that school of art. But it's also fun. Like, kids love these things, and I think if you can make something that makes a kid happy who's not trying to be at all pretentious or impress their friends, they just like playing with it on an iPad, then I think that's a perfect audience for me anyway.
I mean, a lot of the feedback we have is really positive. People think it's quite a genius idea, not just I'm just quoting what people have said to us through tweets and whatnot, and they love the way they can interact with it. And also they've pointed out, before we even actually figured it out, that both these projects were the first to use to have the NFT ask permission to use your microphone. So there's a first in that. And also one of the first really to listen to you and be able to create music and an image from what you're saying. There really is nothing else like that out there. So yeah, a lot of people really respond well to it.
Like, we've seen interactive NFTs, but to me, Dream Engine, this is more like it's alive and like really seeping into our consciousness.
Yes.
And reflecting.
And this brings us back to the point of where we were hoping to, emulate the dreaming blockchain in a way, that it's an alive thing. The whole thing is alive, but we don't see it and we don't even understand it. But if there is any way that we could see it and hear it, it possibly could look like this. Well, it does in our case. It does look like this.
This is the representation, right?
Yeah, this is a visualization in some ways of the actual network, and the blockchain is a interconnected network of nodes. And so we've made those connections in some ways as important as the nodes. When you think of graph theory, there are basically edges and nodes, and the edges are just as important, like what connects to what else. And so in a way, that's like a metaphor for humanity, really, that we're all connected. But at the same time, it's just a playful expression of that idea.
Guys, for the latest news and updates,
Be sure to follow our social media, including Twitter, Facebook, Telegram groups, and TikTok.
there you go. Follow us.
Links down below.